Hello and welcome to another edition of We Debate. I am Joe Munene. Now, it is estimated that over 10 million households in Kenya are dependent on the agricultural sector. The sector employs approximately 40% of the total population and contributes about 35% to the national GDP. However, although the demand for food is ever increasing, the plight of millions of small-scale farmers has been one of pain and frustrations over the years. The business of farming has been a difficult and unrewarding experience for many farmers in Kenya. Has the government done enough to support the success of small-scale farmers in Kenya? And are the government's policies and regulations working for or against our farmers? This is good for debate.
The motion for tonight is, let it be resolved, Kenyan agricultural policies have largely disadvantaged small-scale farmers. Our debaters for tonight are, on the affirmative side of the notion we have Harun Washira, CEO Akili Group and consultant at EcoAct. On the negative side of the motion we have Dr. Oscar Magenya, Secretary, Research and Innovation, Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock, Fisheries and Cooperatives.
Harun Washira, Dr. Oscar Magenya, welcome to this debate platform.
Thank you.
The motion before us, let it be resolved, Kenya's agricultural policies have largely disadvantaged small-scale farmers. Harun, you're arguing on the affirmative side of this motion.
Correct.
Dr. Oscar Magenya, you are on the negative side, in which case your position is that no, they have not disadvantaged. Now, just to give you a quick run-through on the format of the debate, you will have 1 minute to make your opening presentation. We'll do it sequentially. We'll start with the affirmative side, and then we'll come to you, Daktari. Thereafter, you will each have 5 minutes to give a main presentation. After the second presentation, we will go to rebuttals, your chance to rebut against what your opponent has put forth in their arguments. As part of this debate format, we have a panel of jurors, 3 jurors in total, who will be listening and evaluating on your respective arguments. Prior to the start of this debate, the jurors have been polled to establish on their position in regards to this motion. And the opening positions of the jurors is that 2 members of the jury team are in agreement with the motion, that yes, small-scale farmers have been disadvantaged by government policies. 1 of the jury members is on the negative side of this motion. So at the end of the debate, we will poll the jury team once again to determine whether either of you has been, especially you, Daktari, whether you've been able to sway the minds of the jury team as concerns this particular motion. We will be, after the second rebuttal, we will be at the halfway mark of the debate. The second part of the debate is largely question and answers. You will have a chance to cross-examine each other, and also we will give the jury members an opportunity to ask you questions. All right? So to kick us off, we come to you, Harun Washira, on the affirmative side. Your 1 minute opening statement.
Thank you. I'm glad to be in good company because what I'm presenting is nothing but the truth. And I should start by just telling you that I am a small-scale farmer, although with a very big disclaimer. In my first career, I worked as a publisher. I published very successfully a magazine that was called Step Magazine for 7 years, and it was a very successful venture. Then I switched off to IT. I worked for Pricewaterhouse then, and later on PricewaterhouseCoopers, and then developed software and computer systems for many years until it came time for retirement. But in Kenya, we don't retire. We are consigned to the rural areas after our careers in the private sector. So I moved to my rural village, established a home there, and began to operate as a small-scale farmer. And like 10 million other Kenyans who practice small-scale farming, I do what is called mixed farming. Mixed because you grow vegetables, you grow coffee, you grow tea, you keep cows, you keep goats, because you don't know what will succeed. problem number one. We don't specialize. Then I began to seek help, and I went to try and find help from my county. I was told there are more than 100 extension workers. To date, 7 years later, in the rural area, I have never been able to find one in the county. So we have done small-scale farming. We think we are successful right now, and I'll be talking about it, but not because of help from government.
All right. Thank you, Harun. Dr. Oscar Magenya, your opening statement. 1 minute.
Yeah, thank you very much. Mnene, I take this as a very good opportunity for us as government workers to explain a bit about what we do. I am the Research and Innovation Secretary in the ministry, and we are involved in policy formulation and implementation. We all realize that Kenya's economy is primarily agricultural based, where the fulcrum is actually the smallholder farmers. And therefore the government has obviously enacted several instruments and guiding documents to support these smallholder farmers, both crops, livestock, pastoralists and fisher folks. And in addition to that, we have a number of national food security projects that are ongoing in the country. However, it is important also at this point to appreciate the fact that we are working in a devolved system, and the constitution of this country has placed very specific functions both to the national government and to the county governments. And I think I want to appreciate KTN, and particularly this initiative, because it gives us an opportunity to add into awareness creation for the citizenry to understand what we do as government and how we support the small-scale farmer. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Daktari. We now come back to you, Harun, for your 5 minutes presentation. Over to you.
Thank you. I left off my introduction by saying that, yes, we've succeeded in small-scale farming, but not as a result of government support. Based on the assistance I've been able to get from peer farmers, people who have succeeded, I can share 2 quick experiences. One, I was told of a Mr. Karaoke in Embu who had succeeded in coffee. I was harvesting about 1.5 kilos from my coffee plants, each one of them. I went to Mr. Karaoke, he showed me his method, I bought in, and I asked him, why aren't you assisting government to teach other people? And he told me, the only experience I have with government is a fight. They said they hear that I am producing 30 kilos and over per plant, and they say that is impossible. He demonstrated to us by actually picking out berries from the coffee plants and weighing it, and you could see from every branch he can harvest 2 kilos. I copied Mr. Karaoke. Over a 4-year period now, I'm on my 4th year, and as a result of that, I have increased my production in coffee from 2 kilos, less than 2 kilos, to now about 20 kilos per plant. And I teach that to my other neighbors. That's not government. Government has not been involved. My second one is as a result of, I talked to somebody who had succeeded in tea, and he gave me about 4 principles, which I don't have time to talk about, on how to increase the production of the tea plant, from the nutrients to the way you cut it, the way you maintain the level, the harvesting cycle, all those sort of things. And I followed the practice, and my yield, personal yield, increased to about 3 kilograms, which is the highest you can expect from a tea plant. Instead of being praised or asked a question or given accolades, I would Livamiwa. Government, KTDA people came over, the Kenya Tea Development Authority, where we take our tea, and banned me from selling tea because they said I must be buying tea from other small-scale farmers. In other words, they expect you all to be producing at the bottom of the pyramid, and so if you succeed, you are sinning. You are not doing a good job. Now, that attitude is in government, It is in the workers that I interact with at every level of government, and I could have more experiences, but it's distressing because it's not supportive, it's punitive. I think you know that there is a new policy that is supposed to be released in livestock, in which farmers are going to be punished for not registering if they are beekeepers. Their intention is said to be to make it possible for us to manage the pesticides. But the government itself is busy in Mwea coming to kill the quelea birds instead of harvesting them and processing them into nutrients. So the experience has not been very positive working with the government. Now, I am aware that the sector is important, 35% of the GDP, the employment of many farmers, the majority of people who live in the rural areas. But when you look at government policies and government funding, I can cite the policies, CADP, ASDs, CADP, all those big names. I think they're just big acronyms. The crux of the matter is this. Agriculture is supposed to be getting about 10% of government budget, expenditure budget. At the moment, it's not even getting 2%. When you combine the government allocation for budget from for what is allocated by the national government and which is not fully honored, together with what the county government is given to speed up from its own collection, which it doesn't have, the farmer is left largely on his own. He doesn't have the capacity to deal with anything else other than to depend maybe on his peers or on donors. Now, what are donors doing? We interact with them in the rural areas. They come with big cars, they come with big offices, they have capacity building seminars, they have all of those, but nothing to do with anything that happens on the ground. I will, in my other time when I get an opportunity, explain to you some of the ways that we've come up without either government support or donor support, but largely we are all on our own. Big policies, no support on the ground.
All right, thank you, Harun. Big policies, no support. If you succeed as a farmer, you are sinning.
Yes.
All right. Dr. Oscar Magenya?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Before I go into the gist of this, I want to just to comment after my worthy opponent. He says he learned from his friend. And by the way, that friend learned from government. So it's a chain. It happens like that. Sometimes we can't reach every individual farmer, but one way or the other, we are able to reach out there. We have all these constraints, but we realize that 80% of our population who live in the rural area are majorly, entirely engaged in agricultural activities. We define a farmer as one who operates an agricultural enterprise that cultivates crops or raises animals, including livestock. And most of the time, people imagine that everybody in the rural area is a farmer, but we are starting to register to know exactly who are these farmers out there in the countryside. We have an estimate of about 4.4 million smallholder farmers in Kenya. 3.5 for crop farming, 600,000 pastoralists, and 130 fisher folk. Collectively, these small-scale farmers account for 60% of production of agricultural outputs in the nation. This is a population, obviously, where what the government cannot afford to ignore. So we have a number of policies. I would like to just enumerate a little bit. And the ministry has developed more than 40 policies, strategies, statutes, bills, and regulations that are mainly entirely address the small-scale farmer. The two core policy that the ministry has formulated is the agriculture policy and the veterinary policy. While several policies have been developed to support and implement these two core policies, The main overarching strategy that we are now implementing, that was launched in 2019 and is supposed to run for 10 years up to 2029, is the agricultural sector transformation and growth strategy. And it has 9 pillars, and they address the small-scale farmer, about targeting 1 million farmers in 40 zones served by 1,000 farmer-facing SMEs, shifting the national subsidy program from what we have been doing to a more structured and to benefit the smallholder farmers, boosting food resilience in the dry areas, promoting extension services, and the area that Wachira had talked about, the extension service. And I'll come to that because it is entirely devolved. So in addition to the big 4 that the president launched, and it has very clear targets on which we are supposed to meet for our nation in terms of maize, rice, potato, milk, and fish. We are also reviewing the present agricultural Kenya Extension Services policy to be able to bring it in line with what we have currently in the devolved units, and the agricultural research systems policy to focus on how do we harmonize the different aspects that are happening in different organizations of research. So there are a number of things and initiatives that the government has engaged in: the coffee research, the coffee cherry fund, the tea reforms that Wachira mentioned about the KTDA and how to empower farmers in management of this, distribution of milk coolers, development of fish landing sites, establishment of warehouse receipt system, because the small-scale farmer has always a problem of where to market. So how do we help the small-scale farmer to put their produce together to be able to market and benefit? So what I had mentioned a little bit about the devolved system, we, at the national level, we remained with policy formulation, implementation, and review, while the entire extension service is completely devolved. And so we are working together with the counties and supporting the counties to be able to address the issue, because the small-scale farmer is right in the counties. And how do we, that's where the rubber meets the road, not in the national government, but in the counties. So how do we help the counties also to address the issues that the small-scale farmers are bringing up? The other issue, before I finish my time, is the cooperative sector. There is a lot of that is going on to be able to align the cooperative legislation to the constitution and so that farmers can work together, make their demands together, market together, and benefit together. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Magenya. Harun, are you convinced already that the government is doing enough at this early stage? Your chance to rebut to what you've had?
I'm not convinced at all. In fact, I was just thinking that if I were on Oscar Magenya's side, my good friend, Dr. Magenya here, whom I've just gotten to meet today, my position would have been able to say, I would have proposed that, yes, we have very many policies, and he has said it, more than 40 policies. If you ask small-scale farmers to name one of those policies, I don't believe there is a single small-scale farmer who can mention one of them. So I would say the policies exist, but they are not, they don't mean anything other than being on paper. But my points, 4 points to quickly respond to the points that he has raised. One, we have delegated the role of delivering agricultural support to counties. I can give only one example. I was in the process of touring a university that was previously funded by government because it was a training center. But today, all the machines that the government has put there, they are all grounded. Why? Because the money used to come from national government on a vote head that funded those machines. Today, the money goes as a basket to the county government, and the governor has got better things to do than fund agriculture. So that delegation is not working. Number two, he says that what you learned from your friend is what government has taught. The answer is no. Government comes there to bash him because of his success. He's told that he's claiming things that are not possible. What he learned, if I had time, I would be able to explain where he got his knowledge because I followed it up. He is appreciated everywhere else except by government officers. Point number 3, if we are supporting cooperatives and we are providing coolers and we are providing other things for the county governments, how come 50 years into independence you do not see functional successes in those areas? You know, I think you have to ask yourself, if I'm focused on something, we do evaluations. When I was working, you are evaluated, you succeed, you are given a promotion. In government, we implement a new policy, it doesn't work, we come up with another one. Another policy, we give it to a donor, and the donor comes to give capacity building, and it doesn't work. Same thing, never succeeding, 50 years. Look at Singapore. 50 years on, about the same time as us, they have evolved a country without one river, but they are the largest exporter of ornamental fish. They talk about how to improve our ornamental fish production every single year. Our own governors go on trips to learn on what they call benchmarking. They come and they don't implement. Lastly, coffee. Our production has been on a downward trend from 120,000 tons, metric tons in the 80s to now just around 39,000 metric tons. Maize, we are importing. We are importing maize instead of growing it. Even the experiment in the Galana just turned out to be the biggest joke, the only project that the Israelis have ever supported, and it did not succeed. Why? Corruption, we say. That's what I was told. When you talk about cupping score, I don't know whether you know this, most Kenyans take tea instead of coffee, but our coffee is scored in the international market by what is called the cupping score. Over the last 15 years, in spite of all the research that is going on, Ruiro 11, Bati, and all those whatever, our cupping score has been on a downward trend from 90 cupping score in the 80s to now around 86. I export coffee, so I know. I can tell you. We are told, if you give me a cupping score of 88, we will come for it all the way to that farm that is producing it. When you look at our production, most of what we are eating is coming from outside the country. Surely, we can't even feed ourselves, and we have policies, and we are funding agriculture. We signed the Maputo Declaration as a country and said that we will honor the 10% commitment, but we don't honor it. Instead, we are giving an excuse. Please allow me to just read this excuse that the government has given as a result of just saying why we are not implementing the Maputo Declaration. The institutional setting in which ASDs operate has changed significantly. The consolidation of national ministries has changed the dynamics of horizontal sector coordination, as most of the consolidated sector ministries now perform several of the 10 sector functions by ASDs. Therefore, we have given that job to others. That's our government.
Maybe, Harun, for purposes of our viewers' understanding, maybe just shared what were the objectives of the Maputo?
The Maputo Declaration was to, first of all, allocate about 10% of the government's budget towards agriculture in order to promote value addition, direct markets, increased production, all of that. Nothing like that happened as a result. We signed it, we changed it, we multiplied it into other things, and we gave an excuse for it.
All right. Thank you, Harun. Dr. Magenya?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, my worthy opponent. He has raised a number of issues, and I think I'll respond to them briefly. On capacity building, on delegated, what he said about delegated, we have delegated our functions to the county governments. It is obviously laid out in the Constitution. But even despite of that, we have not completely let out the counties. One of our functions at national level is capacity building. We continue working together with the counties to be able to capacity build them so that they can address the priority areas of agriculture. That capacity building includes training of trainers so that then now the county governments can take over those responsibilities and reach to the farmers. In addition to that, we are also looking at how we are reviewing the National Agricultural Research Systems policy to be able to bring the different good work that is happening in the different organizations together so that we can harmonize that to address our national priority areas for research, for research in agriculture. Because without research, we cannot move forward, and we think we need to address that together. We have a lot of work that is going on in universities and public research organizations, international research organizations that are based here and they're doing good work. But how can we bring, and that is what we want to bring them together and be able to see how we can work together. So I came here knowing that government is always bashed, so I'm ready to be bashed. But I want us to always know that we are all together, and how can we work together, because this is our country, and how do we work together to be able to attain our national goals. There is a lot of work in policy formulation that is going on, and we don't formulate, these days because of the Constitution, we don't formulate policy at the national level alone. We have to have public consultation. We move out to the counties and work together with stakeholders to before a policy is approved, enacted in Parliament, it has gone through all these processing. And that is where we want to encourage everybody, even the small-scale farmers, to come up and make their input in that policy process so that we can work together and develop policies that are right for us. The cooperative management. Many years ago, we realized how cooperatives were very good in bringing farmers together for both input purchase and also for marketing. But the issue of management came in and spoiled most of our cooperatives. The issue of corruption that Bonawachira has raised up, it is not government, it is a public problem that we have as a nation. And so we have to deal with corruption, and that helps for us for leadership in cooperative movements also. The Maputo Declaration, it talks of 10% to agriculture. That has never been attained, but we want all of us to help us, because it is an issue of how do we mobilize ourselves to make sure that Treasury provides the 10%. It's not the Ministry of Agriculture alone, but all of us working together to be able to make our point known that agriculture has to be funded adequately, because if we are calling ourselves an agricultural-based economy, we have to fund it well. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. Maybe a question, two questions.
Yes.
In terms of the distinction between national government, county government, is that a necessary distinction when it comes to the plight of farmers who are also voters for the national government leadership?
You know, the issue is the function was devolved. It is no longer in the ministry headquarters. So all the staff that were in that line were devolved. So that is where the problem is. The problem is, how do counties now prioritize the issue of where do they put their money for agriculture or in other places? And then we come in together and then serve the small-scale farm.
Would you say the counties are doing a good job?
They are growing.
They're growing.
May I comment on it?
Go ahead.
First of all, the government had a very good mechanism for vote heads, only at a national level. When the government gives money to counties, you would expect they would keep the good part by giving this amount of money to county X to fund this, and then hold them accountable. That's how we run our businesses. I give money for travel to sell a product. Now, even though it may be implemented all the way down by an individual, I can hold that individual accountable. That's not complex. Talking about the subject of corruption, because county governments are also being accused of corruption. Here's the big issue. Corruption requires somebody with a backbone. I was chairman of Tana Water Service Board, I can tell you. And my boreholes were being sunk at 6.9 million shillings each. I examined it, found that it was all corruption, and within 3 months, we had brought down that budget to 1.5 million for that same thing. With 200 money allocated for 200 boreholes, we sank 700. But my neck was at risk every day of my life when I was in that board. So you need a backbone to be able to say, I will fight corruption. Corruption is not difficult, by the way. It can be fought, but by a person who says, I will deal with it. I was accused of being executive chairman as a result, which was okay. I was bashed, but I was successful.
All right.
Yeah, and actually, if you look at what is being done to try and transform the KTDA, there's a lot of work that is going in and a lot of resistance, but something is being pushed through.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Very good. We are now at the halfway point of this debate. We take a short break. We'll be back after the commercial break. Thank you. Welcome back to the debate. We start off this second part of the motion with cross-examination. We'll come to you, Dr. Magenya. You have a chance to ask 1 or 2 questions maximum to the affirmative side of this debate. Over to you.
Thank you very much. It's nice to debate Wachira. Thank you very much. My one question, how can you help us, particularly in the national government, in making sure the smallholder farmers make their priorities captured? One, in the policy formulation, whenever we move out in the field, sometimes the small is so pulled back, they don't make their points very clear. Second, in the county development plans, because that is where the budgets are allocated. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
I'll give you maybe an answer that you don't expect. We do not need any more policies. As you said, we have more than 40 policies, and if you ask farmers what any one of those policies are, they will not tell you. I work with small-scale farmers in my other hat, and right now I'm working with probably about 150,000 farmers. We get our money from carbon credits. The carbon credits comes from the area. I give a macadamia tree or an avocado tree to a farmer. He makes money. A portion of that income from carbon credits comes back, and we use it for capacity building. The capacity building we give is practical training. What you do, your coffee on January, February, March, April, and you increase your production. Very practical. If we can get the government to do that, to finance that level of capacity building, using money that can be generated locally, you don't need more money from the budget. Australia gets carbon credits from their farmers and they use it for their capacity building. So the help I could give national government is to show them how to harvest carbon credit money, because I do it, 99% of my income comes from carbon credit, and then use it locally to build capacity. Number 2, county governments. The governor for my county came to visit my farm when he was told that we had a program where you harvest 100 kilos of yams from one yam hole, a technique that we developed. When he saw it and he ascertained it, instead of appreciating it, he hated me. Why? He told somebody that because he believed that I would use the opportunity of proliferating that mechanism and use it to stand for politics. I have no interest in politics. There are people who live for other reasons other than politics. It is for us to help the county governments to know that there are specialists who can work on things, and you, government, support them to work with those specialists to get results on the ground.
Let me ask, so in terms of the policies, the government has many policies.
Many.
So is it an issue of the government's failure to communicate?
Yeah, I think it's execution.
Their plans and their objectives?
We just don't have people who are willing to execute. I don't want to mention this, but when I was watching the debate, I don't want to dwell on it, but when I was watching the debate at the IABC versus the court and all of that, many of those issues that were coming up, I face them every day. We have a system for collecting data, uploading it into a system, putting it onto our server, and in the air it changes. Not because the people want to change it, but because the capacity of our people for practical work needs to be upgraded. So we need to focus on training our farmers to do the right thing. Yeah? When we send an agronomy expert on a farm, we don't go there with a manual. We go to say, you need copper green. And this Nordox is the best copper green available at the moment. Buy it, we'll come on Tuesday, we will see how you are spraying it. Then the person comes and shows the farmer, you know, don't spray from the top, only spray from the top, from the side, whatever, have your mask on, etc. And we do it practically, we do like 10 stems, do the others, and I'll come back and check. You understand? Mm-hmm. So it is practical training that farmers need. And then when you have succeeded with one, you bring another person to that particular farm to see it.
So to contextualize the question Daktari asked, your advice to the government would be, we need practical advice on the ground.
Yes.
The extension workers that used, agricultural extension workers that used to be there, are they still there? Whether provided by the county? Yeah. And maybe the question then to Harun after you answer would be, are you feeling these extension workers on the ground?
To me, if I can answer mine and then he answers it, I can tell you they are there. That's what you're going to say, isn't it? Are they there?
No. That's not what I was
maybe,
going to say.
maybe explain that, then I talk about the extension funds.
Let me say I agree to some extent to what Wachira is saying, but the issue is practical training, practical issues that you are raising on the ground. And I agree that is what we need to do. But let me give you a very small way governments work. And all over the world, it's not only in Kenya. You must have a policy that guides. From the policy, you develop strategies. From the strategies, you develop work plans. Yes. Those are what brings out the budgets.
And we have them.
If we don't have a budget for what you want in practical ground training, you cannot do it. No. And that's why I say, how do we input the small-scale farmers' priorities in the county development plans? Because that is where the budget will come to make those practical trainings on the ground.
All right.
And then in addition to that, after the devolution, the extension service was devolved. Now different counties have different priorities. Some have extension workers on the ground because they're able to pay and employ. Others don't have. And so that is where the disconnect is.
Manene, I have on my desk several county development plans for the counties. In every one of them, the component for agriculture has not been implemented. I check with the county governments because I'm working with them. Actually, I have a project for carbon credit that is in about 4 different counties. Mm-hmm. And I asked them, why aren't you implementing? And they say, there's no facilitation. I say, but you have got money that you're spending on all kinds of other things. He says, the money is spent based on what the governor and his people believe is important. That's a big problem.
So how would you explain that agriculture is not a top priority?
Because politicians do not know how to make money from themselves in agriculture. When my program is a good example. My program in carbon credits does not need government funding. But for them to support me to implement it, they ask me what is there for me. And I say, there's nothing there for you personally. And they say, then it's not important. What is that? Corruption.
Yeah. All right. Harun, you have one question to Daktari?
Yes. My problem is why we continue to do the same thing over and over and over again and never are willing to learn, to change. Israel, when they discovered that the Sea of Galilee is drying up, They desalinated water from the ocean and began to pump it to the Sea of Galilee. Everybody is complaining about drought. They themselves, they say we have extra water. They have changed with the climate change. How come that our government never changes? I don't know, maybe to give you context. In 1918, Bwana Munene, the colonial government established the National Cereals and Produce Board to protect the white farmer against the black farmer when they were producing maize. Now, today, we still maintain the National Cereals and Produce Board on the same framework where we don't pay farmers based on the total cost of production, but based on what the government establishes to be the buying price. Same thing the colonial government did. Why don't we change?
Dr. Magenya?
Thank you very much. Why don't we change? Let me tell you that that has been in the past. The kind of work that I see in the ministry right now, there is a very strong push for transformation. We know, we understand where we have come from and the difficulties and the challenges that we have faced as a sector for agriculture. But there is now a very strong push for transformation. And one of the areas that we are transforming is on digital transformation. That we might never have the kind of extension service that we used to have. But right now, there are a number of apps that can assist the small-scale farmer. And how can we bring now those applications, digital applications, to assist our farmers? Currently, we are also developing what we call the Kenya Unified Agriculture Data Platform, where all the work that has been done in agriculture can be put in a centralized place where now the stakeholders can have access to this information, extension materials, work that has been done before, and what can separate different farmers can have advantage of in terms of production. And this we see that in the long run will help us transform. So Bwana Wachira, we are not doing the same thing every time. We did that many years, but now we are trying to see how we can bring particularly the young people on board and the women folk to be able to improve our production, particularly for agriculture. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you both. Now we cross the floor to the members of the jury team. All right, over to you.
Thank you so much for your convincing debate. Mine is quite simple and quite to the point. We actually yesterday was the last day of the Africa Climate Week in Gabon. I'm sure most of you know about it, as it's a predecession to the COPA 2022 in Egypt this year. So none of you has brought out the climate change and its effect to the small-scale farmer. It didn't come out like I wanted, but I want to hear, what are the mitigations? What do you think about it as we try to tackle climate change and its effect to the common farmer in Africa? Thank you.
The question is to both the debaters?
To both of them.
Okay. Yeah. We'll start with?
It's only that, you know, our timekeeper is always raising this thing, so so we can't put everything on the table. But we have a very elaborate project that is called Kenya Climate Smart Project, and it's about mitigation and adaptation of, we realize that climate is a big issue for our agriculture. And now, actually, we are mainstreaming climate smart agriculture into all the programs that we are doing. So, because if we develop technologies that are not addressing climate change, are useless. So, this big project that is funded by a big donor is reaching out to the farmers. It's actually in all the 47 counties, and developing interventions from research and with the farmers to address climate change issues. So For the national government, this is working together with the county governments to see how we can address the issue of climate change.
All right, Harun?
Okay. I'm actually very glad you raised this, and I apologize that this did not come out very clearly earlier on. But we are heavily involved in this. We have a research project. My company has a research project with Kenyatta University in which we are looking at the effectiveness of the utilization of invasive species to promote the growth of other species. For example, prosopis, mathenge, what is commonly known as mathenge. You can convert it into biochar. That biochar applied in a farm retains water so that the cabbage that would not have grown there easily because the rain falls short will now have enough water to be there. Now, that project is successful. We have finance for it, and we are going to be rolling it out when we have succeeded, when we finish the research in March. We already have investors who are willing to invest in promoting the proliferation of biochar from invasive species to our target is 1 million farmers. Why is that important? Because using what we already have, mathenge, lantana camara, other species that really destroy the environment, we can create something good. I don't know whether you know that Kenya is a major importer in the world of a product called diatomite.
Yes.
Now, diatomite holds 2.5 times its weight when you pour water in it. And if you dig diatomite into the hole and you put manure and then you plant a plant there like a coffee plant where the water was not available January, February, March, you will have water there for that entire period. We are rolling out diatomite in large scale. Kenya exports it to our shame instead of us utilizing it in our farms. So those are the kind of things that we do. And finally, it is promoting species that can survive. I don't know whether you know moringa, the Moringa oleifera, highly nutritious, and it grows best where it is hotter. And lastly, the mwarubaine grows best in 80% of Kenya that is very, very dry. And we can promote it and get carbon credits for it.
All right.
Can I add a small?
Yes, go ahead.
Because you mentioned about the COP.
Yeah,
Actually, most of the work and the organization about the COP meetings is through the Ministry of Environment, but we are represented in the Ministry of Environment. So we take part of a stakeholder, major stakeholder through the Ministry of Environment. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, but okay, I will go back to my second question related to the same. You see, we have so many policies, yeah? I've gathered a lot of information today, so much, you see. But now, is it going to down there? You see, I just came from, we are running a project in Lodwar on climate smart agriculture. But we were working with the people down there. The same problem. I come from Kajiado County. Right now, they're appealing for help because of the drought. Yeah? Still, we have so many policies, but why do we have to go over and over again? You see, like we just saw that Eritrea just received aid from a country that is fighting to feed them.
Yeah.
What are we not doing as a continent, as a country, for both of you?
Yeah.
How can we evade this problem of asking for food all the time?
Yeah. It's very unfortunate that we in this age and era we are still asking for food. But there are some issues that are beyond agriculture. But the issue of policies, I know we have many. But as I indicated, that how do we now work with the counties, because that is where the smallholder farmer is. Let me tell you, counties are semi-autonomous. They are counties, they are real counties with small presidents. You can't push them, you can't control them, you can't supervise them because they are counties. But we are trying to work because we have developed what is called JASCOM, which is the Joint Agricultural Sector Coordination Committees, which brings the counties and the national governments together to be able to look at how do we prioritize our things, because we are addressing the same farmer.
Yeah.
Yet, in the budgeting, how do we help the counties once they get their money that they allocate this amount to agriculture? How do we also ourselves make sure we push Treasury to allocate to the overall agriculture? So those are very important issues. They are very significant, but we are trying our level best. Yeah.
Harun, 10 seconds to
Yep.
respond to
The
question.
response is keep it simple. The reason why we don't do many things in Kenya is because we want complex things where there is money to eat. I built 648 sand dams, each one of them at 500,000 shillings, and to date, almost 10, 15 years later, they still keep water. If you build sand dams across most of the rivers that do not have water throughout the year, that community will always have water. But there's not very big opportunity for corruption. Number two, I would like to get my worthy opponent to only think through this issue. You can hold a governor accountable. If you have a structured program of where this money is going and you do not do it, we can punish you, not necessarily by jailing you, but denying it. If I give you a billion shillings for agriculture and you don't use it for agriculture, why should I give you a billion shillings next year? It is, but you need people with backbone at the headquarters to be able to do that. And I know it can be done, but because we want always to be the nice guys,
It's not the Ministry of Agriculture headquarters.
Fair enough.
Headquarters in Treasury and internal security. That's
All
okay.
right.
okay.
Okay. I'm sure as an objective, we're all working
Yes.
to get the youth
Yes.
in agriculture,
Yes.
Yes.
to get our young ladies in
Yes.
agriculture.
Yes.
I'm sure Marion has some questions for
Good.
either of you. Marion?
Speaking on youth,
Yes.
early this year, that was in July, the first bunch of avocados were exported to China, Shanghai, and they landed safely. What is the government doing, Bwana Oscar, to ensure that youth get access to the vast market, and I repeat, vast market of avocados in China?
Yeah, thank you very much. We are very specific and very particular, very passionate about youths and women. You qualify for the two, eh? So in the ministry, we have a very active unit on agribusiness. And the issue is, how do we get markets outside there? Part of the target for the Big Four was about how do we provide planting material to the groups out there on the field. And a lot of fruit trees, and particularly avocado, was done. A lot of that was done in many places. And so I agree that we have not done enough. We are doing, but we are particularly focusing on the youths and the women to try and support them in terms of producing for us and for export. And most of these projects that I mentioned that are national projects for agriculture have very specific components for youths and women.
May I make my own comment on the same subject?
Yes.
Tell them to come to me. Over the next 1 year, our organization, our Kili Group, is giving out more than 3 million seedlings of avocado and macadamia and other income-generating trees. Who is funding them? Carbon credit investors. We plant an avocado tree on your farm, you get the fruit, we receive the carbon in there, we share it with the investor, and 15% of the carbon credit money comes back to build water infrastructure, facilities like that in that community. We are together. So this program can be extended extensively. Number two.
Harun, let me just interrupt you there. So could we say that maybe we are looking to the government,
Yes.
in this case the national government as
Yes.
represented here, and whereas maybe the solutions are actually with the private sector?
Actually, you
organizations
should
like
not look to government. When we approach the government to try and plant trees, now in trees, the species that should restore the environment so that, for example, the rainy areas can remain rainy. I was given an express letter forbidding me from planting trees in the forests. So government should be our last resort, but we should do it with the youth.
All right.
One statement, please. Government is not a last resort. Let me correct that, because government provides an enabling environment.
Yes, yes.
It is not even, government is not even involved in the business. But government provides, all over the world, they provide an enabling environment. Then everybody, every stakeholder can come in and take their place.
I agree with that.
So you would say that all these successes Harun is sharing?
Yes.
Yes, government.
Without security, without what he
Fair
can't.
enough. That's fair enough.
All right,
Yeah.
we go to our last juror, number 3. Your question, directed to who?
My question is directed to Dr. Magenya.
Right.
As we seated here, I was thinking about a beekeeper in Kitui and Irish potato farmer in Molo.
Yeah.
And you've talked about almost 40 policies that you put in place for the small-scale farmers. And in all those policies we've seen that you discussed, I tend to see some disconnect. A lot of policies, but the people on the ground know nothing about those policies.
Yeah, thank you very much. Let me give you an example of one policy that I was involved in that is just at the cabinet level for an action. It's the National Agricultural Research Systems policy. And this policy, we went through a very thorough way up to where we are. First, looking at the peer commentators and their input. Then we went to the counties. At every county, we call county representatives and their farmers, because they are generated from the county agriculture offices. And then we present and they critique and input. And then after that, we brought it at the national office and it is advertised in the press, in the websites, so that people can come and make their presentations to address what the policy is talking about and their input, and everything was inputted in. So I would say it is a very thorough process. But the issue is, and I asked my worthy opponent, is that we know when we go to the counties and tell them, can we get representatives of farmers to bring and critique and input into the policy? Sometimes maybe we don't get the right people, so it is up to the county level to produce those demands and those inputs into our policy making so that we are aware and we are sure that everything is being captured by the real small-scale farmer. But it is thorough, it is constitutional. You can't pass anything, otherwise Okio Mtata will be on you. So we have to make sure that it is consultative and any input is captured in the policy.
All right.
30 seconds to give you a piece of information on a current one that applies to bees. It's called the Livestock Bill of 2021. It caused an uproar because recently it requires you to be a beekeeper to become registered. It also bars me, the livestock farmer, to mix my own feeds. I have to buy them from the big guys. And then it also has a penalty of 500,000 shillings for non-compliance. Is that a policy intended to support the small-scale farmer?
No.
I rest my case.
Dr. Magenya, maybe you would like to respond to that?
Yeah. We want Bwana Wachira, because is it still a bill?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. There's still room for Bwana Wachira to make representations that will be captured in that. If he doesn't, it will go through.
Okay.
But if he makes representation,
yes,
then we capture those issues that are hindering the small-scale farmer to be a beekeeper.
Thank you.
Maybe I would ask, in your view, what would be the motivation for a bill requiring registration of bee farmers?
Let me tell you, most of the time it's just about regulation. in this country, there are many places where we have opened up, and every Tom Dick comes in and spoils whatever good intentions there are. Sometimes it's important that you limit who is serious to do a particular activity. But that has to be done in consultation.
But I can tell you what they say about the reason for that particular bill.
Yes.
Is because of pesticide residue. That we are producing honey, sending it out, and then it gets rejected because it has got residue, which is a genuine issue.
Yeah.
But it's the wrong way of dealing with it, because a lot of those chemicals, I go to a farmer's meeting with containers that show what the pesticide is all about. And I ask the farmers, do you see this label out here? Do you know what it means? And they say no. They're blue, yellow, red, whatever. And then you see the red labeled ones, which are not supposed to be used on anything to be consumed by human beings, but they are sold by all the agrovets in that particular area. What is the government doing, allowing those things to be sold? So our problem is a management problem, not a farmer problem.
Okay.
And a management problem for society.
Not
All
government.
you and me have to make sure this thing is controlled.
Okay.
Because sometimes we do our part, but the traders are not in agriculture.
Okay. Thank you to members of the jury panel. That brings us to the end of the question and answers. And now we are at the final phase of this debate, our closing statements. We will start with you, Harun. 1 minute to close and really summarize on the arguments you've been making, and then we come to you, Dr. Ari.
I would like to appreciate my worthy opponent and KTN for facilitating this because it's a worthy debate and this subject can carry on. I would like to mention that we do need solutions to support the small-scale farmers. The models are there, whether they are carbon credit funded, whether they are funded by the county government, or whether they are funded by the national government. The problem is not at the policy level. The problem is being able to engage us, the small-scale farmers, in applying that funding that is allocated to small-scale farming and making sure that it drives the kind of results that we are looking for. At the moment, we don't see government, either at the national level. We see donors, and those donors come to us with their big cars and capacity building facilities that literally do not help us on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you, Harun Wachira. Dr. Magenya, your
Yeah,
closing
thank you.
statement.
Thank you very much. I also appreciate Bwana Wachira. It was nice talking to you and debating with you. I would want just to re-emphasize the fact that this country belongs to us, and all of us have a role and a responsibility to make sure that we improve our agriculture. Now that agriculture is known as the backbone of this economy, so we all have, in different sectors, different stakeholders, and also government, that we work together to be able to move and advance agriculture, because agriculture employs quite a bit of, if we're talking about youth employment, agriculture can pick that very quickly. If we're talking about food security, agriculture can also contribute into that. And so it behoves all of us to work together to be able to move and advance this issue of agricultural development, and particularly also about the devolved units. We need to work together to see how we can facilitate and capacity build each other at the national and the county levels so that we work together for agricultural development. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you both for an insightful and informative debate. It's obviously a topic that we could go on and on and on because it's really pertinent and there are a lot of issues to be looked at.
At the beginning of the debate, 2 of the jurors were in support of the motion and 1 was against.
Well, the jury's verdict is in at the close of this debate, and none of the jury members at the end of the debate are on the negative side. So, Dr. Magenya, you've lost one of the jurors who supported you at the beginning. 3 of the jury members are on the affirmative side in concurrence that Kenya's agricultural policies have disadvantaged small-scale farmers. Perhaps we'll have a part 2 of this debate to further, because I think there were also issues to do with the time constraints that we had. Well, that's the position of the jury panel. Do you agree with it? We welcome your feedback and comments on this debate. Please engage with us on the social media handles appearing on your screen right now. That's it for this edition of We Debate. A big thank you once again to the 2 debaters, members of the jury panel, the KTN team behind this production, the location host, the Norfolk Hotel. A big thank you, and of course you, the viewer, for participating and watching and staying tuned to this important conversation. My name is Joe Munene, and I'll see you at the next debate.